Hi, I'm Kyle with the Nebraska Forest Service, and today we're going to talk about mushroom inoculation. And what's important to emphasize here is some trees around your homestead, your property, in the town or country may be something that you're going to consider as waste wood. But today we're going to show you how you can take trees right in your own backyard and start growing your own food. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about tree selection. Here we have Denise Wally, our forest property supervisor here at Prairie Pines. Denise, we've got a nice little log deck here. Tell us about what we're looking for when we're ready to inoculate.
Yeah, well, these are hackberries, and that's one of the species that some of the softer wooded mushrooms like. So when we're looking for a good log, first thing we want to look is probably just at the wood itself and to make sure there's no other fungus species in here. Like this one has just a little, it looks like a little bit of fungus in the heart, and so I probably wouldn't choose that one. Looking for something that's, you know, about 4 to 6 inches, because the bigger it is, the harder it is to lug around. So I try to get something 4 to 6 inches. And so we look for something that's got, you know, a nice clear wood, 4 to 6 inches, and then we'll pull that off of the pile and cut it into like 3-foot sections to start our inoculation.
So if we're talking about someone wanting to maybe clean up their backyard, is it possible for a log to be too small to use?
It is. You want enough room where when you put the plugs in that they have at least 2 inches in between them. So essentially you need, this is probably the smallest you could do, and you could do one on this side and one on this side. So the point of having a little bit bigger log is that you can put multiple plugs in it, so you have more opportunities for fruiting bodies to form and have more mushrooms.
Okay. So Denise, you want to tell us a little bit about these logs that you inoculated last fall?
Yeah, these have been sitting for a full year, and we tried a couple of different varieties of mushrooms and different varieties of, well, different species of trees. These are bur oak logs, and they've got shiitakes in them. This is sugar maple, and they have shiitakes in them. This is hackberry, and we put a golden oyster. And then these are willows, black willow, and they have golden oysters as well.
Yeah,
well, actually 2 different kinds of oysters, really. So
right.
This one's golden, and this is a Kira, I believe.
Okay. Well, it's interesting. So we're in mid-March. It's still kind of cold here this morning, but we're already seeing some mushrooms emerge. Can you tell us what's going on there?
Yeah, well, I just uncovered these last week because we started to get in some warmer weather, and I came out and watered them to give them a new flush of moisture. And again, I noticed too, you can see that the fruiting bodies are already starting to emerge from the plug holes, which means we're going to have mushrooms really soon.
Yeah, and how big will these get over the growing season?
Well, obviously we don't want them to get too big. We're going to harvest them when they're probably about that big.
Okay.
When they're edible size, and then it will keep producing every time we cut them off, and they'll produce more as long as it's productive, and then it'll go dormant and hopefully do that again for 3 or 4 years.
Okay. So you can't just inoculate your logs and let them be. It looks like you've spent some time kind of setting up a little stand for these. Can you walk us through what's going on there?
Sure. Well, you can, but the problem is there's fungus everywhere. And if you put your logs directly on the soil especially, then undesirable fungus may start to colonize your logs, and then they may outcompete the ones that you're trying to grow. So the best way to get around that is to make a base, and I've used cinder blocks and some concrete paver type things. You can use anything that will basically cover the soil and prevent any splashback from rain, because when rain hits the soil, sometimes those fungus spores can, you know, pop up and hit your logs. So anything that would prevent that, which is another reason I have this under here as well, to sort of protect it from alien fungus, or undesirable fungus is what I would say. So yeah, any kind of a base that you want to put, you can even, another method I'm going to try with my next batch is just putting logs in a put 2 like this, 2 like this, 2 like this, and just keep like the bottom 4 logs just plain logs. Put my inoculated logs on top to hopefully prevent, you know, any of the fungus from coming up, undesirable fungus from coming up into the logs I've inoculated. So yeah, there's multiple ways. There's so many different methods of making your log stacks. There's A-frames, there's TPs, there's the stacks I just talked about, and then there's just kind of lean-tos as well. So I mean, there's lots of ways to do it.
Yeah, so the takeaway is we want the logs up off the ground so we can't have any residual soil splash back up on the logs.
Right, yeah, just you want your desirable species to have no competition from all the fungus that live out here in the wild.
Which is good, just not for mushroom inoculation.
Right, yeah, we want fungus. Fungus are important, but for our logs, we want to eat them, so we want to know what we're growing.
So another important thing to remember, if you're doing multiple species of mushroom and logs, you're going to want to keep these in place and keep track of them over time. If you do them in the fall, it's going to be a long time before you visit them again in the spring. So Denise, these are just aluminum tags wrapped around, it looks like, with the planting date and a species name.
Yeah, I usually put the planting or the inoculation date, the species of tree and the species of mushrooms, and I put 2 tags on. And I read on some website that you should put 2 tags on because there are lots of animals that like shiny aluminum tags. So if one gets destroyed, then hopefully you have the second one as a backup. So I nail one in the end, and then I wrap one with a wire around just one end so that I have double the information, because you can already see there's at least a couple of tags that have been, it looks like, chewed up by something. So.
Okay, so it looks like we've got some hackberry set up here for inoculation, but these are at different stages. So if you want to walk us through, maybe we have our hackberry that we want to get ready to inoculate. Where do we go from there?
Okay, so hackberry is kind of a corky barked tree. So the first thing we'd want to do is just kind of lightly shave off the corks, trying not to get too far. Like you can see a couple of skinned places here. Don't go all the way into the bark. You just want to get it so that you can drill your holes and they'll be flush with the bark. So we use a draw knife, and draw knife's nice and sharp, and you can just very easily and gently pull those corks off. And then see, you can have a nice smooth surface, and that gives you a better surface to drill into. And it'll look like that when you're done.
Okay, so it looks like you've got your drill set up. I'm assuming it's because we want to be at a certain depth with each plug. So roughly how far are we talking between the end of the drill bit and the stopper you fixed here?
It's about 1 inch. Most plugs are about that. It's just a little dowel that's been colonized with mycorrhizae.
Okay.
And so I usually just use the dowel itself to measure where the stop needs to go.
Okay.
Because you don't want to go any deeper, because you don't want any air pockets on the bottom side of that. You
Sure.
want that to be all flush with the wood, contact with the wood. So
Okay.
yeah, so that's where you set that. And another important part is the spacing on the log. You want about 2 inches in between each plug. That gives a good area for the mycorrhizae to colonize and then eventually meet up, and so that they can colonize the whole log before they produce their fruiting bodies.
Right, full coverage.
Yeah,
basically.
full coverage.
Okay.
So yeah, so just usually take a tape measure and then just mark out, 2-inch increments, and then drill the holes and then go 2 inches that way and do the same thing until you've gone around the entire log.
Yeah, so if you have 2 people, this makes for a nice family activity. One person holds, the other drills. Obviously, make sure your batteries are charged. We're at the 2-inch mark, right, Denise?
Yep.
And we are going in.
And you want to go all the way to the stop. That's good. There you go. Yeah, and then you just come 2 inches more to where it says 4 and do another hole.
Okay, so we have all of our predetermined holes drilled. It looks like we're ready to inoculate. So Denise, looks like they're maybe a little bit of debris in here, but nothing really to worry about, right?
No,
Okay.
it's just sawdust from the hole. So.
Okay.
So yeah, when you're putting your plugs in, you probably want to wear protective gloves so that you don't contaminate your plugs. And you're gonna stick them in there. Stick this in there, and then you're gonna hammer it till it's flush.
Okay, and I kind of noticed that these appear to be a little bit wet. Did you soak these in water or anything beforehand?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
The plugs themselves should be a little moist because you want to keep your mycorrhizae moist. So yeah, you might see a little splatter from the moisture that's in it, but that's okay. There's no problem with that.
Great.
So once you've put the plug in, you want to seal the plug with some kind of, well, this is called plug wax, but this is to help hold in moisture where your mycorrhizae are, and also to prevent other fungus that you don't want from invading into that particular spot where you've put a plug in. So you want to, it's not the easiest when it's cold. There you go. So you want to seal it off as much as you can.
So depending on how many logs you want to inoculate, that's going to determine how many plugs you order. But roughly on this one that we've started, how many individual plugs will we need?
Probably about 80 for this one. So you can see that the bigger your log is, the more plugs you're going to have in it. And you know, there's a little bit of leeway too in how much spacing. You probably don't want to do too much more than 2. But you can space it out like 2.5 and have less plugs. But it will take longer for the fruiting bodies to come out because the mycelium has to inhabit the whole wood, the whole log, before it fruits.
Okay, so we have this log, it looks like fully inoculated. Final steps, looks like we fixed on an aluminum tag with the date and the species name.
Yep.
So really, what's the final step when you're getting ready for these to start growing?
Well, once you've got them all inoculated, got them tagged, you take them over to your spot, and then you have to make sure the log stays moist, especially if it gets really dry in the summer. I use a garden hose, and I just sit there and spray them for a while, make sure that the water is covering the whole log, and then just let them dry out in the air. So the biggest enemy of your mushroom is your log drying out.
Okay.
So you want to put it in kind of a shady area, but still an area that's going to get some moisture, because moisture is what causes your mycelium to be able to colonize into your log.
Okay. Well, let's go have a look.
Okay.
So we've got our logs inoculated, we've got our setup. Roughly how long are we talking about before we're going to see mushrooms?
It's just going to depend on the type of mushroom. The oyster mushrooms I saw last fall, just after inoculating in the spring. The shiitakes, they're going to take a year, so I probably will see them this year. It'll just depend on what species of mushroom you're growing.
Right, and it's really nice that this isn't taking up that much space. So really, this is a good growing situation for someone in town, maybe living out in the country.
Oh yeah, I think you could do this in your backyard because you can make shorter logs. You could even set the logs up upright and just have like a little pad. You could have like 3 or 4 logs. If you had a small acreage, obviously you certainly could do it. You could even do it in your garage if you wanted to. I think anybody could grow mushrooms for their own pleasure in any situation.
So today we covered selecting the right trees for inoculation, what mushroom species you can use, and how you can do this on really any scale to fit your own needs. Of course, there's going to be a lot more information out there. We've compiled some of our favorite resources in the information below. I'm Kyle Martins with the Nebraska Forest Service, and this has been a Forest Product Tidbit.